China to face peak in population deaths. Why is the topic sensitive? Chinese sports figures die suddenly, public debates. Hard to die well, retired officials become the focus of attacks. The CCP prepares for the attack on Taiwan, but reports indicate she offended the military with a single comment. It's all covered in today's China Truths. China to face peak in population deaths. Why is the topic sensitive? On July 7, the hashtag China will face population death peak reached the trending search list on Weibo, only to be taken down by the following day, July 8. Reported by Jiemian News, a paper entitled Characteristics and Evolutionary Mechanisms of China's Population Death Peak was published in the government-affiliated Population Research Journal. This study, authored by Professor Zhang Jin from Fudan University's Population Research Institute and Professor Li Chang from the Gerontology Research Institute, addresses the challenges posed by rapidly advancing population aging and an unprecedented peak in population deaths. The paper traces the history of China's birth rates, noting an initial increase followed by a period of diminishing fluctuations. The study highlights a minor birth peak in the 1980s, followed by a continued decline in birth numbers until a brief resurgence after the adjustment of fertility policies in 2016. However, it anticipates that future birth numbers will likely remain low amidst ongoing fluctuations. The authors refrain from discussing the mass terminations resulting from the CCP's one-child policy that began in the late 1970s. According to figures released by China's National Health and Family Planning Commission, from 1979 to 2013, at least 450 million fetuses were aborted. This aspect was pointed out by Australian historian Li Yuanhua, writing for the Epoch Times, who suggests that the paper harbors some undisclosed secrets. He argues that the CCP's one-child policy has disrupted China's demographic balance, creating a precarious situation. The brief increase in births in 2016 is seen as the CCP's recognition of this demographic crisis, which led to the relaxation of the policy to allow 2 children, although this has not been significantly effective. Additionally, the article examines changes in mortality rates and the impact of the 3-year famine on population dynamics. The authors notably avoid the official term 3-year natural disaster and do not provide figures related to the death toll from the 3 years of Great Famine. Yang Jisheng, a former senior reporter at Xinhua who has spent over a decade researching the famine, describes this period as a man-made disaster caused by the CCP's autocratic rule and policies like the Great Leap Forward between 1959 and 1961, with death toll estimates ranging from 17 million to 60 million, and he uses the middle estimate of 36 million. Li Yuanhua disclosed to the Epoch Times that the 3 years of Great Famine is another secret referenced in the article. He notes that each year, millions died from non-natural causes, a topic domestic scholars could only briefly mention. He claims that the CCP certainly has the data, as they regulate the movement of people through the household registration system, meticulously recording births and deaths. However, these figures are too sensitive and have never been publicly disclosed. Overlooking the massive death toll impact of the COVID-19 pandemic? The article from Population Research details the mortality trends in China since the 1980s, noting a gradual increase in the mortality rate from 6.34 per thousand in 1980 to 7.87 per thousand in 2023. Alongside an increase in average life expectancy from 67.77 to 78.20 years. Concurrently, as the elderly population, those aged 65 and older, grew from 4.9% in 1982 to 15.4% in 2023, the number of deaths rose, reaching 11.1 million in 2023. Despite these statistics, the data does not reflect the significant number of deaths during the recent COVID-19 pandemic. In late 2022, a notable spike in elderly deaths occurred in China as the country shifted abruptly from strict lockdowns to an open state, leading to nationwide overcapacity at crematoriums, a situation that remained in the public memory. Subsequently, the CCP's Civil Affairs Department stopped releasing funeral statistics and has not resumed, obscuring the actual death toll from the international community. Li Yuanhua commented on the article, stating, It likely includes the impact of the pandemic, though the officially reported death rate from the infection is untruthful. He further criticized the CCP for concealing the actual mortality rate and disguising the causes of death. During the latter stages of the COVID-19 outbreak, the untested infected were not counted as virus deaths, particularly affecting the elderly or frail with other health issues, whose deaths were attributed to these other conditions instead. Li Yuanhua also speculated that the CCP's abrupt end to lockdowns might have been a strategic decision to reduce the elderly population. He expressed concerns about the CCP's disregard for human life, suggesting that the regime that previously enforced strict birth control might now be tactically eliminating the elderly, viewing them as no longer contributive to society. Additionally, the referenced population research article projects significant demographic shifts due to the aging of the baby boomers. A notable increase in death rates is expected by 2040, peaking at 19 million deaths in 2061, before gradually decreasing. From 2024 to the end of the 21st century, an estimated 1.23 billion deaths are expected in China, averaging 16 million deaths annually. The authors advocate for the rapid development of hospice care systems, improved long-term planning for funeral services, and ensuring a balance of supply and demand. They also recommend providing legal services to protect the rights and address inheritance disputes of the elderly. Addressing broader implications, American economist David Huang emphasized the importance of predicting and preparing for demographic peaks to manage societal resources effectively. However, he noted the uncertainty of these issues receiving adequate attention in China. Highlighting the consequences of China's one-child policy, he described the severe disruption to societal norms and the significant stress this policy has placed on individuals, compounded by China's inadequate social security system. He described the immense pressure faced by Chinese citizens, tasked with supporting both older and younger generations, amidst declining economic conditions and insufficient social safety nets, concluding that their hardships far exceed those typical in similarly developed nations. Topics removed over concerns of impacting CCP's third plenary session. News reports on the article from Population Research have sparked discussions among Weibo users. Here are some of the comments. I see 120 ambulances on the road every day during this period. I know the death wave has arrived. Negative population growth is an inevitable trend. The population dividend is gone. The inhumane family planning policy of the past accelerated the disappearance of the dividend. Now, even if you want people to have children, no one wants to. On the X platform, many netizens are also discussing, removing the article doesn't mean people won't die. It's unbelievable what the CCP does. There's no reason, just cruel and stupid. Another said, I don't believe China's population is still 1.4 billion. After the pandemic, immigration waves, and declining birth rates, the total population is probably less than 1.1 billion. Others also commented, what China fears most is losing its world-leading population size, the cheap labor resource that drives economic development. The elderly entering the death peak are ordinary people who have worked hard all their lives. The privileged and retired officials can at least delay this by 10 to 15 years compared to ordinary people. Regarding the rapid takedown of related Weibo topics after they trended, economist David Huang believes that with the upcoming third plenary session, the authorities might be worried that these discussions would affect the national image, so they suppressed them. Australian historian Li Yuanhua commented that the article in the Population magazine ostensibly discusses elderly mortality rates, but it coincidentally touches on social issues that the CCP cannot resolve, making it a sensitive topic. The population boomers are entering old age and leaving the workforce, while the annual birth rate is extremely low. The population structure is chaotic. Chinese sports figures die suddenly, public debates. Recently, the deaths of several famous figures in the Chinese sports community have captured public attention. In detail, on the morning of July 4th, Wang Nan, the former captain of the men's basketball team from Heilongjiang province, died unexpectedly at the age of 42. The official statement attributes his death to sudden cardiac arrest, with medical interventions proving unsuccessful. The circumstances of Wang Nan's death from cardiac arrest have prompted widespread media coverage and public discourse. Wang Nan was recognized as a national-level basketball athlete. He represented Heilongjiang in the national sports meet and played for the Yunnan Honga Basketball Club in the Chinese Basketball Association (CBA) Men's Professional League, as well as for Heilongjiang in the National Men's Professional Basketball League. He had been a faculty member at the Harbin Institute of Finance since 2018. Notably, just a few days earlier, 17-year-old Zhang Jiqia, a Chinese badminton player, also died of sudden cardiac arrest during a match in Indonesia. He was transported to a hospital within 2 minutes, but despite attempts to save him, he succumbed to sudden cardiac arrest. The sudden deaths of these two sports figures within a single week have drawn attention, particularly with suspicions related to the new coronavirus. Following the release of a video showing Zhang Jiqia's collapse, various professionals have commented on the probable cause of his death. On July 1, Dr. Lu Xiao from the emergency department at Zhejiang University's second hospital stated that the young athlete's sudden death, preceded by clear convulsions, suggests a significant likelihood of a severe arrhythmic event. A medical blogger from mainland China, known as Lin Bewley on Weibo, emphasized, "Don't stop me from suspecting the new coronavirus. It shouldn't happen at this age. Beyond the virus, beyond COVID. We already have scientific evidence showing that the new coronavirus infection can continually impact the heart. This includes even mild cases. Even in mild COVID infections, where there were no pre-existing heart conditions and the individual was previously healthy, the heart can still suffer effects." Furthermore, Upstream News reported on July 1 that Zhang Jiqia's uncle disclosed that Zhang had always been in excellent health, with no history of heart problems in the family. They were shocked and devastated to learn of the sudden death of the cheerful and outgoing Jiqia. Liana Xiaobao, a Singapore-based Chinese-language newspaper, reported on July 7 that Zhang Jiqia's family received a local medical report from Indonesian authorities on the 5th and submitted it to Chinese personnel for translation to help investigate the incident. As of now, the official explanation for Zhang Jiqia's cause of death remains simply sudden cardiac arrest, with no further details provided. Studies show increased risk of sudden cardiac death following new coronavirus infection. Xing Yuan, a lawyer based in mainland China and using a pseudonym, told Epoch Times reporters in an earlier interview that he had never experienced heart problems before, but developed cardiac issues after contracting the new coronavirus. Additionally, many Weibo users have been sharing their experiences with the long-term effects of COVID-19. One user shared a particularly striking case. A 28-year-old, who tested positive 5 times, now suffers from heart failure and has made a will, despite having no prior heart problems before contracting COVID. On July 7, a Weibo user named Xinhua Dabai referenced a study from the Hong Kong Polytechnic University which discusses the increased likelihood of sudden cardiac death within 30 days of contracting COVID-19. The study revealed that the frequency of sudden cardiac arrests in Hong Kong was lower in 2018 to 2019 compared to 2020 to 2023. Specifically, in early 2022, at the height of the pandemic, there were 800 cases of sudden cardiac arrests in Hong Kong, significantly surpassing the pre-pandemic peak of over 200 cases. In June 2023, the online edition of the Chinese Journal of Cardiovascular Diseases published an article from the Cardiovascular Medicine branch of the Chinese Medical Doctor Association. This article states that the COVID-19 virus can impact various bodily systems, including the cardiovascular system. Research has found that approximately 12% of COVID-19 patients hospitalized may experience myocardial injury. Furthermore, those with existing cardiovascular conditions and risk factors face increased severity of COVID-19 infections, which could exacerbate and decompensate cardiovascular diseases, potentially leading to acute cardiovascular complications. Hard to die well, retired officials become the focus of attacks. 2 years ago, Mr. Zhou, a former high-ranking official of the Chinese Communist Party who fled to the United States, disclosed lesser-known insider details about the regime in the Epoch Times. Before his 2019 departure to the United States, Mr. Zhou had just retired from a high-level departmental position in a provincial government, where he had been the leader of a vice-departmental agency and enjoyed special privileges. He mentioned that he wouldn't have left China if he had seen any prospects for survival there. Mr. Zhou commented on the living conditions of Chinese people, noting that these conditions affect not only the general populace but CCP officials as well. He likened China to a big prison, with smaller cells within this large system. He highlighted the absence of freedom in China, where officials are compelled to lie daily to elevate the leadership as a survival tactic within the CCP's bureaucratic system. He described the personal distress caused by this forced dishonesty. He observed that the majority of his fellow officials faced grim fates upon retirement. Approximately 70 to 80% were imprisoned, losing their freedom and property, with their families also suffering consequences. Mr. Zhou noted that under the current economic strains, removing a departmental official could save the country about 30 million yuan, about $4.1 million USD. How is the 30 million yuan figure calculated? A department-level official typically earns a retirement salary exceeding 100,000 yuan, nearly 14,000 US dollars, annually in benefits from premium medical treatment. Even a minor cold treated at a hospital can cost tens of thousands of yuan. The yearly medical expenses for such an official range between 500,000 to 1 million yuan, approximately $69,000 to 138,000 US dollars. Given the high-quality healthcare, they often live to about 90 years old. When you add up the retirement salaries over 30 years, the total comes to approximately 30 million yuan in public expenditures. Arresting such officials not only cuts these costs but also leads to the confiscation of their assets, potentially worth millions to billions of yuan, and can also affect their children. Before 2017, officials nearing retirement might face demotion instead of imprisonment if corruption was uncovered. However, policies have since intensified, requiring imprisonment and retrospective investigations spanning 20 to 30 years, with the simple goal of generating money. Mr. Zhou reflected on the vulnerability of retired officials who can be targeted at any time without their former power. He shared an anecdote about a retired friend from the CCP's National People's Congress who felt safe earlier in the year but was later arrested and has yet to be sentenced. The pervasive insecurity has driven many officials to consider escaping China, although actual escape is challenging without a passport. Mr. Zhou noted the harsh penalties for caught smugglers, particularly severe for party members and officials, with many such death sentences remaining undisclosed. He also revealed that a Chinese Communist Party Central Military Commission official had mentioned in a party class that numerous officials are sentenced to death annually, but these are kept secret. Furthermore, Mr. Zhou said that he has also publicly withdrawn his affiliations with the CCP's Party, Youth League, and team organizations via the Epoch Times 3 Withdrawals website. Reflecting on the political system of the CCP, Mr. Zhou believes that even according to its own laws, the CCP has neither registered as a political party nor received recognition through public elections. It essentially operates as an illegal organization, aimed at deceiving the public and serving a select few interest groups, while employing tactics of brainwashing, oppression, and intimidation. He stated, "The CCP is currently enforcing a harsh regime, essentially requiring people to obey, to quietly serve as slaves." The CCP prepares for the attack on Taiwan, but reports indicate she offended the military with a single comment. The international community is increasingly concerned about the Chinese Communist Party's ambitions to control Taiwan. For Xi Jinping, the stability and reliability of the military are critical factors in his decision-making about whether to take military action against Taiwan. This issue has been the subject of detailed analysis by various experts and scholars. In addition to the CCP's tendency to use foreign conflicts to distract from domestic issues, Taiwan's semiconductor industry could also be a motive for the CCP to resort to military action. Klaus Asholm, a semiconductor analyst, raised concerns in a recent blog post. What would happen if Beijing planned to destroy TSMC and the semiconductor supply chain in Taiwan and other regions? He also questioned Beijing's response if it wasn't deterred by TSMC's ability to remotely shut down its equipment. Asholm highlighted that Taiwan, South Korea, and China hold the top 3 positions in global semiconductor production capacity. Should South Korea and Taiwan become embroiled in war, China would take a leading position in the semiconductor industry. Such a conflict in the Taiwan Strait would be detrimental to the United States, particularly harmful to major American fabless semiconductor companies that depend on the Taiwanese supply chain. There have been growing concerns from the tech industry, military, and political figures about the Chinese Communist Party's ambitions towards Taiwan. On July 5, the Hudson Institute's China Center and the Taiwan Defense Security Research Institute held an international seminar to address the CCP's legal threats in the Indo-Pacific region. Lai Aicheng, CEO of the Prospect Foundation in Taipei, pointed out that the CCP maliciously distorts UN General Assembly Resolution 2758 to bolster Beijing's One China principle, suggesting the CCP's ultimate aim is to establish a legal basis for the use of force against Taiwan. Lai expressed concerns that when the CCP decides to attack Taiwan, it could potentially declare at the United Nations that this is a domestic issue for China and subsequently announce sanctions against nations that support Taiwan. This is a serious concern. Chu Ai-jen, the former Secretary General of Taiwan's National Security Council, agreed with Lai Aicheng's assessment. He noted that Beijing has learned from Russia's experience with international sanctions and consequently, the CCP has been repeatedly emphasizing Resolution 2758 in diplomatic settings. Their strategy aims to categorize the Taiwan Strait issue as a domestic affair of China, thereby avoiding international sanctions for aggression. He further observed that the CCP values international legal warfare highly and has been actively preparing for it. For instance, during military exercises around Taiwan, 4 Chinese Coast Guard ships were stationed in Taiwan's eastern maritime area and remained even after the exercises concluded. The Chinese stance was that these ships are not military vessels, thus the Taiwanese Navy could not engage them. These maneuvers are part of the CCP's strategy to test the reactions of Taiwan and the international community in legal terms, whereas Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense is still pondering outdated questions such as how to respond to the first strike and whether to declare war. Discussing the potential for conflict in the Taiwan Strait, it's notable that the CCP's military leadership has experienced an unusually large-scale purge over the past year. This raises questions about Xi Jinping's confidence in his military forces. According to a report by Voice of America on July 6, former People's Liberation Army Navy Staff Colonel Yao Cheng mentioned that Xi Jinping, soon after taking office, targeted the military, arresting several hundred generals and alienating a large number of military personnel. The military reforms disturbed many vested interests, causing widespread dissatisfaction among senior military officials. Yao disclosed that in 2017, when discussing an attack on Taiwan, Xi Jinping stated, "Even if we can't win, we must fight," which alienated the military. Yao also quoted military personnel expressing their discontent, "If we can't win, I'd just end up in the sea. I'm being sent to die in vain, so why don't you go fight yourself?" Don't forget to leave a comment in the section below to share your opinions on today's topic with us. Make sure to like and subscribe to see more interesting topics from China Truths.